Hi, welcome to Look Who's Cooking. My name is Pat Bebo.
And I'm Chef Bill Walker.
And this show is for you. This show is about healthy cooking. It's about ideas to make your food dollar go further. It is to educate you and to allow you to have fun in the kitchen. So today, what are we doing, Bill?
Today we're going to be making a really nice chicken, broccoli, and brown rice casserole. We're going to be focusing on whole grains today, so the brown rice casserole. We're also going to be making a really simple broccoli salad and some peaches.
Great. So remember last episode we did build our pantry, and that's the first place we have to start. Before we make a list for the grocery store, we have to look at what we have so we don't rebuy things. That's spending extra money that you don't need to. So Bill?
What we generally do before we start cooking is we want to gather together all our ingredients, and that's a real sort of basic idea. So we have all of our stuff out and ready to go so we can focus on what we're doing. We don't want to be running around trying to grab ingredients, trying to stop in the middle of our cooking. We want to be able to focus our attention on what we're doing. So we're going to gather all our ingredients beforehand.
And I'm going to go to the pantry and use your recipe for this. Make your recipe your friend, because that's going to give you the list of the things that you need. So I'm going to go to my pantry and get out a few things. Bill, could you get me, let's see, I need the peaches, and we're going to need some vinegar. I have the onion and basil over here, the thyme and the black pepper. Oh, and not to forget the dry milk.
And I've also got two different kinds of onions here, Spanish onion and Bermuda onion. We're going to need both of those for two of the dishes. And as much as we can, we try and use ingredients that you can use in more than one dish and will store properly in your fridge or your pantry so you're not wasting your food dollars.
Right, so we've got some things in the freezer from our pantry shop, so don't forget that. So Bill, could you get me out a bag of broccoli?
Sure.
And I think I also need some mayonnaise. And I think, looking at all our recipes, I think the only thing we need is some sunflower seeds and some chicken.
We're going to be starting with a dry cream soup mix, and we're going to make this mix ourselves, and we're going to make enough that'll be for approximately 10 portions, and this stuff will last about 6 months in your pantry. So you can save a ton of money instead of buying condensed cream soup mixes for these recipes. And the other great thing about the homemade dry cream soup mix is that it is very, very low in sodium, comparatively speaking. Canned cream and mushroom soup mix has 2,100 milligrams of sodium, and our homemade dry mix has 111. So it has about 95% less sodium in our homemade dry soup mix, which is going to be a big help for you.
You'll also save on the amount of fat. There's only about 0.2 grams of fat in this dry cream soup mix, and in regular cream soup, in one serving, you're going to get 23 grams of fat. So all around, when you pick your own ingredients and make things yourself, you have control over what goes in.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to be using is the non-fat dry milk powder.
I'll help you out with it.
Fantastic. We're going to do 2 cups, and this package doesn't tell me how much it is, so I'm going to measure out 2 cups. The next thing I'm going to need, Pat, please, would be the cornstarch. Okay. I'm going to do 3/4 cup of cornstarch. Thank you very much. I'm also going to need the chicken bouillon.
Chicken bouillon. Any spices?
Sure, yeah. I'm going to need pepper, basil, and thyme, and onion flakes.
Okay, so I'm going to help you out here, Bill, because this is the first time we're using this, because we just did our pantry shop last week, so I'm going to open these up for you. It's always fun to cook together in the kitchen.
Turns out this was 2 cups.
There you go.
All right, 3/4 cup of cornstarch. And Pat, is it important that this be exactly 100% precise, or can you kind of season this to the way you like it? Maybe you like a little more basil, you like a little less.
Sure, absolutely.
Thyme or a little more black pepper.
Cooking should be what you're going to like, all right? You know that, Bill.
No, I was... All right, I've got my dried chicken bouillon cubes. This is dried chicken bouillon flakes, actually. And the only difference between this and the bouillon cube is the shape. So the bouillon cubes are a little tightly compressed, dried out piece, they won't really mix well into a dry soup mix. So we want to use the powder. It should have the same, everything else should be exactly the same. And of course, we bought the the no sodium, no MSG, no gluten. So I have 1 teaspoon of thyme, 2 tablespoons of onion. This is my onion, my 2 tablespoons. One of black pepper, and 1 basil, and then 1 thyme. And all these spices will last forever on your shelf, so the first time when you stock in your pantry, this may seem like a pretty big investment to get all these spices, but I use black pepper and thyme and basil every day, every week when I'm cooking at home. Then that was the hard part. So here's the easy part, is mixing it all together. You could use a spoon, you could use a spatula. I feel like a whisk works real well. Combining it without chunking it up. The dried milk will not chunk up ordinarily unless it's exposed to moisture. So pretty much that's it. That's what it looks like, and that's your dried cream soup mix.
So you want to store that in an airtight container. We'll use what we need for today's recipe, and we'll have it for recipes for months to come.
Terrific.
It's not always easy to travel across town to get to the supermarket, and sometimes we don't have time, so we order fast food just because it's fast. Well, what if I told you there was a neighborhood market just around the corner with healthy, inexpensive food to make your family a great meal? Let's go look. A quick trip to your healthy neighborhood market means you still have time to cook your family an affordable, healthy meal. They have fresh produce, canned vegetables, frozen vegetables, whole grain cereals and breads, and even low-fat dairy items like milk, yogurts, and cheese. Everything I need to make a great meal. When it comes to dinner, being short on time doesn't mean being short on options. Visit your healthy neighborhood market today.
All right, so we're going to be starting our recipe now. The broccoli, chicken, and brown rice casserole. The first ingredient is cooked chicken breast. We have some boneless, skinless chicken breast that we got at the supermarket. And there's a lot of different ways you can cook it. You could cook it in the oven, you could poach it in some chicken broth, you could microwave it. The quickest way is probably to microwave it. And while I'm not a huge fan of using the microwave, there are some things that we can do to make it a little more palatable to people like me, and that is we're going to make sure we season it properly, and we're going to cook it in a way that at least it's not just plain old microwave chicken. So I'm going to take a little bit of the same seasonings that we used in our dry soup mix, some black pepper, some basil, and some chicken broth. And I'm also, the chicken broth, the idea behind this is I'm going to cover this in saran wrap, and while it's microwaving with a little bit of water in there, it's going to create a little steam, and we're going to have some chicken broth that's going to sort of circulate around the chicken and flavor it while it cooks it.
Can I ask a question, Bill?
Sure.
Why would you cook it first? See, so if I was reading this recipe and it said cooked chicken, I would figure that I should chop the chicken first and then cook it.
Well, that's a great question. Ideally, chicken's going to be easier to cut after it's cooked. It's not going to fly apart. It's going to stay together in nice, easy to handle pieces. But also, it's going to be a little more sanitary. We're not going to be touching raw chicken to our cutting board and having to stop and really get down and deep and cleaning and washing and sanitizing and resetting. So anything that we can do in an order that will make our cleanup a little easier will also benefit us along the way.
That's great.
So I'm sprinkling this with a little bit of our world-famous low-sodium chicken powder, chicken broth powder. Generously going to season this with black pepper. A great chef once told me that men always over-pepper and under-salt.
That's not a bad thing.
Well,
we need more of that. But let me ask you, Bill, so I'm the kind of person that needs to measure everything. Does it matter here?
Well, I would say I could give you sort of a broad measurement with this, but it's kind of what you like. I love basil. Basil's my favorite spice. My mom always grew it in the yard when I was a kid. So I would probably go kind of heavy on the basil.
Okay.
The thyme, maybe not so much, and maybe maybe I don't like as much of that. I feel like I went kind of generous with the chicken broth, and I'm just going to put about 2 tablespoons of water on the plate. We're going to cover this in saran wrap. We're going to put it in the microwave for about 3 minutes or so, and I'll show you how to check when it's done to make sure it's cooked all the way through.
Right.
And then we'll have cooked chicken breast.
That's another fear I have, is not knowing if chicken's done or not. You know, the other thing is that Bill's used a lot of these spices. Spices are great, and you should look for them on sale. Lots of people think that they're really expensive, and when you first look in the store, they do look expensive. But they do go on sale. They're on sale at different stores, and you can really get good deals on spices. They last, and you're going to use them. Use them, use them, use them to put flavor and to enjoy the food you're eating. So you need the microwave.
I will need the microwave. Something I always tell my students is that a microwave, consider it like you would consider a pot or a pan. You got to clean it after every time you use it. You would never use a pan and then cook something else in it without cleaning it. You don't want to use your microwave without cleaning it either.
We would call these food safety issues, and you really want to keep your food safe. You hear about it all the time on the newspaper and the radio, and these are the little things that you can do. Cleaning after each time you use your microwave, making sure your cooking surfaces are clean, that will help keep your family healthy as well as yourself.
All right, so we're going to cook this. We're going to start with about 2-3 minutes. Now remember, we can always cook it a little more, but we can't take it back once it's been cooked too much. So we're going to try and err on the side of trying to make sure it's cooked all the way through without cooking.
So I'm going to watch you do this because I always overcook.
All right, so power level. So 3 minutes on high is a great way to start. We have 4 half chicken breasts, so it's 2 whole breasts split in half. 3 minutes, I think, will probably be pretty close. Now, microwaves vary. We have a nice, big, strong, powerful microwave here. The one we use at my kitchen at work is an industrial microwave. It cooks real fast. Maybe you have a little small apartment-sized microwave. It might take a little bit longer. But again, we're gonna err on the side of undercooking it a little bit so we can check it and we can cook it the right way. Once we start sizzling it and burning it up, it's no way to take it back.
Bill, do we have to turn it?
No, well, this microwave we don't. We're very fortunate. This is a carousel microwave, they call it. It's got a little spinning plate inside of it.
And that'll take care of it?
Yeah, most microwaves these days have that, and the idea behind that is it's going to let it cook a little more evenly.
Okay.
The way the microwave cooks is it vibrates the water molecules and turns them into steam while it's cooking. So in our plate, all the water might be gathered in one little spot. So with it turning around, it should theoretically cook a lot more evenly.
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Yeah. Okay, I've heard that before. But we'll see what happens. I'm trusting you, Bill. I'm trusting you. So this is the first part of our recipe. We always have to start somewhere. And
sure.
This is what we're going to start with. Obviously, I didn't know that we would do I would chop it first, but Bill taught me something. And this is, the idea here is that it's easy to do this in your own home. But you have to look at your recipe first, know where you're going, and decide what you're going to do first, then next steps as you go. Ooh.
While we're waiting for our microwave, I'm going to sort of get my prep station together. Where I work, I'm going to call this my prep station. I have a wooden cutting board here. Any cutting board is fine. We ordinarily put a towel underneath a cutting board, and the idea is that a wet towel underneath a cutting board will prevent the cutting board from slipping. Once again, that's not food safety per se like we think of, but it's personal safety. And I don't want the more control I have over my environment, the less stuff slides, the less stuff moves, the less stuff is not what I'm going to expect, the safer I'll be.
You're using knives, so you don't want to have a moving target.
And we have 2 different kinds of onions here that we're going to be cutting in a few minutes after that. This is what they call a Bermuda onion. Some people call it a red onion or a purple onion. You see these on salads all the time. These are yellow onions. Really, the flavor is the same. I don't really see too much of a difference.
They still make you cry, don't they?
Yes, they do. There is... some people have different sensitivities to that. Some people can cut onions all day and it doesn't bother them.
Have you ever heard running cold water helps you not cry?
I've heard a lot of different theories, and so far I've not found any that work for me. There's a sulfur-based compound that's inside every onion, and it's in the membrane between the layers of onion, and that's what affects your eyes. It actually affects your mucous membranes. When you breathe in, it goes to your eyes, to your nose, and that's why people
so their
they
answer
don't just
is
cry.
Don't breathe.
The answer is hold your breath the whole time while you're cutting onions.
Bill, I think we use the red onion for our salad, our broccoli salad.
All right. Let's check our microwave. We
want
to see if our chicken is cooked or not. Now, while it may look cooked, there's only really one sure way to check it, and that is to cut into it. And ordinarily what we do in the restaurant business is we want to take the thickest piece of whatever we have. And so if all of these chickens were different thicknesses, we would find the thickest piece, and we're going to cut into it. I have a small knife here.
Oh, it smells great, just like it is.
And I can see just by looking at it that it's not cooked all the way through. This top piece is, but you can see that bottom, you see all that pink right there. So what it might help us to do is maybe spread it out a little bit further around the plate, and then we'll pop it in the microwave for another 2 minutes. We probably should have spread it out before we did it the first time. That would have made it a little easier. And I can see that there's a couple of spots that really didn't get seasoned all that well. So before I do that, I'm just going to hit those couple little spots with a little more black pepper and a little more of my chicken broth. Like I said, men like to over pepper.
So you're starting to get hungry now because it's smelling really good. And this is we only spent 3 minutes just now. So this is going very quickly. This is not a long, involved process. This is the simplest part of putting together your menu and your recipes. So this shouldn't take more than 15 minutes to put together and you're done.
All right, so now we've gotten our chicken out of the microwave. And the first thing we're going to want to do is make sure it's cooked all the way through, of course. So like I said, I'm going to take the thickest piece I can find, and I'm going to cut into the thickest part of that piece. And just look at the inside. It's pretty obvious to tell when chicken is cooked or not cooked. There's no sign of pink. It's all nice, bright white. And that's what we're looking for. So we know our chicken's all the way cooked. While that chicken's cooling off, so just to make your life a little bit easier, we're going to cut our vegetables now, and we'll cut our chicken afterwards when it's a little bit more cool, so I don't have to burn my fingers, I don't have to worry about slipping and sliding. Once again, I can focus on what I'm doing and be a little more precise.
Bill, can I stop for a second? I noticed that the recipe calls for brown rice. Can I start the brown rice?
Absolutely. What we're using is a boil and bag brown rice, so it's a little quicker and easier to use. It's already portioned for you, and you just drop it into a pot of boiling water. And
it takes 10 minutes.
It's
really quick. People think brown rice or whole grains take longer to cook, but they don't. This is just as quick as a white rice, and the health benefits are far outweigh the white rice benefits.
Great.
So let's cut that onion. I think I'll move out of the way.
We're going to cut some onions. This is, like I said, a Bermuda onion, Michael Simon's favorite kind of onion. And I'm going to show you guys how we cut an onion. I'm going to be using what's called a French knife. Pretty much, this is, people call it a chef's knife or a French knife. This is your pretty much standard knife in the kitchen. We're going to be cutting our onion from North Pole to South Pole, as opposed to cutting it around the equator. Now,
why do you do that?
Exactly. I was hoping you'd ask that. If we cut it from North Pole to South Pole, we keep the core intact, or at least half the core intact. This is going to help it to stay together while I cut, so it won't be slipping and sliding all over the place. I'm going to peel off just the outermost layer of onion, because you pay for the whole onion and you're throwing away, hopefully, just the skin. You don't want to buy something and then just haphazardly throw away parts of it that are usable. And the only thing that's not usable on this is the very most outer layer of skin. And if you're having some troubles getting the skin up, it's easy to use a knife, and you just scrape with it, and it picks it up, and you can pick it off just like a piece of plastic or a piece of paper. I'm going to dice this into what we call a small dice. There's lots of different dices, small, medium, large. I'm going to make little lines through my onion. There's no need to try and go fast like this at home. And now, because I had my core in there and my stem, it holds it together for me, and I can just go like this, across, and all my cuts will be the same exact size. We want cuts to be the same size for a lot of different reasons. For one, they look nicer, but more importantly, things that are the same size cook in the same amount of time. So if I have big giant chunks of onions, those might be raw by the time my regular onion is cooked, and vice versa. If I have tiny little pieces, those can be overcooked badly, while my regular onions are not cooked yet. And that's all I'm going to end up throwing away is this one little tiny piece of stem at the end.
So that's great information on using the whole onion. And this is for the salad. So this is a good onion for the salad. Now, in the recipe, it says a chop. Doesn't it say a chop?
It says a chop.
Does it say a chop? Is that bigger than what you did?
Well, a chop is a very nonspecific term. A dice is even a nonspecific term. A dice is a shape. So any square is a dice. But this is a medium dice. This would be a fine dice if I cut that down into fourths. So that would be a fine dice. The French name for that is a brunoise, which is a brunoise. It sounds much more important that way than a fine dice. But yeah, what we're looking for are bite size. This has to fit on your fork. This has to fit in your mouth. Nobody wants to try and shove this in their mouth. But this for a salad, that should fit on my fork pretty well. That should fit in my mouth pretty well.
Is that's something that's good for me. I'm not, and that's even, so that it cooks evenly. But it's not so important when I see chopped that it has to be a specific size.
No, as long as it can fit in your mouth, it can fit on your fork. That's what we're shooting for.
Okay.
You always hear that phrase, bite size. That's really what it means, is it'll fit in your mouth.
Because I know that I've gotten confused with some of these terms. You crying yet, Bill?
No, I'm good.
Some of these terms in recipes, because then I don't know what they mean, but that helps a lot.
All right, so now we're going to cut our chicken. And my chicken is a little bit cooler now, so it's easier to work with. And I'm going to cut my chicken into a small dice also, like a medium dice, probably a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch. So I can line up all my chicken in a row, cut them all into strips once, and then every time I cut, I'm making 5 cuts, so I'm cutting in a lot faster. If I were to cut each piece and then cut each one individually,
oh, that makes a lot more sense.
It would take a lot longer.
And we're, again, looking for bite-sized pieces.
Bite-sized pieces. This should be perfect. This would fit on your fork. This would fit in your mouth, no problem.
Yep.
So today we're focusing on whole grains, and the only way to determine whether or not it is a whole grain is by looking at the food label. And so you're going to look at the nutrition facts label, which is located on every single food item there is, and you're going to look under ingredients. And the key word here is whole. So the magic word we want to look for is whole, and that'll be located on the food label. Also, if it is a whole grain, it'll have fiber in it, and fiber is also a key content that we want in our bodies because it's very healthy for us. So the easy way to spot whole grains is just to look on the ingredients list. It should be the first one there. It's very easy and it's healthy for you.
All right, so now we're finally ready to start the actual cooking process here.
I think the brown rice is done.
Perfect.
Bill, can I take care of that for you?
Absolutely. Please drain that out. I have a pan. The recipe calls for a Dutch oven. Dutch oven really is any pan that can be used on top of the stove or in the stove. So any pan that is made out of metal, no plastic on it, is fine for that. We've got a pot that we're going to use on top of the stove, and we could put it inside the stove if we wanted to. I've got 2 teaspoons of butter. I know the recipe calls for margarine, but I'll tell you from my perspective, I prefer butter over margarine for a couple of reasons. I think it has a better flavor. And if what we're focusing on is fat content, they're identical.
There's
margarine
no
and butter are the
right.
same.
You're right.
So from a chef's point of view, I'm going to go with what has the better flavor.
And I have to tell you the truth, from a dietitian's point of view, I would go with the better flavor as well. We're not using that much butter, we're not using it in excess, and we're using it as a flavoring agent. And it is a natural product. It's sweet cream butter, and that's all that there is in it. So we want to stay as simple and as natural as possible. Again, you're in control of your ingredients. So butter would be my choice as well.
Right. Once my butter's hot, I'm going to be browning my onions, what we would probably call sauté.
I'll help you with this.
And sauté means in French to jump. The idea is we're
going to make them jump.
Right. And my 13-year-old who does ballet could have told us that, because in ballet they say sauté and they jump in the air.
Really? I didn't know that.
But the idea is the food has to move a lot, and that's what sauté is all about, is moving it. And you can hear it. Sauté has a sound to it. You can hear that sizzle.
There's enough smell to it too.
And we're going to cook these onions till they're a little bit brown. There's a technical word for that too. We call that caramelization. Caramelization is when we cook the sugars in the food and they come up to the surface. So when that onion gets nice and brown, not only is it going to look cool, it's going to have a much sweeter flavor. The difference between a raw onion and a cooked onion is pretty dramatic, and that's the caramelization. That's all that beautiful sugar that comes to the top.
And that doesn't mean it's going to have any change in its calories or anything else. It just means that that part of the onion is changing because of the heat we're adding to it. And it makes the onion taste better. It also makes it a better texture for eating.
Right, it's a lot easier to eat when it's nice and soft and sugary like that. It's much more appealing.
Last time I bit into a fresh onion was bad. So
you want eat it like an apple?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we've got our